Hi, this is Steve Stroud. I thought that this short slideshow would be useful in terms of some of the information we went over in our class. So I hope you have some time to scroll through it. As always, you can find me at drstevestroud.com, and you can always email me at stevestroud@gmail.com. Of course, we are supported by the Ripple Foundation, so check all that out. We're going to talk about some of the basics, intro, planets, and signs that we did talk about in our class, but let's just jump right in. You know, astrology is just a language, and when we talk about the planets, the signs, and the houses, we're just looking at symbols that are part of our unfolding evolutionary pattern. And you know, it's always valuable to say, just as a clock tells time, a clock doesn't create time, and the heavenly bodies show us the big picture. They correlate to our lives, but they don't cause it. So that's always good to keep in mind. You know, that's really a symbolic language. And in the foundations of astrology, we have three main basic language places. One is planets, of course, signs, and houses. The planets tell us what, the signs tell us how, and the houses tell us where. I love this quote from Carl Jung. We are born at any moment in any given location, and like the vintage years of wine, we have the qualities in the year and of the season which we are born. Of course, Carl Jung was a big fan of astrology. Astrology presents us with three main questions. The planets, the what part of our psyche is ripe for development in this lifetime. The signs tell us how that best reach our evolutionary goal. And the houses, of course, tell us where. And there are 12 houses. And the chart is laid out in such a fashion that the sunrise is over here on the east. And in a chart such as this, we know that the sun, this is a symbol for the sun is high up in the sky at the time that this person was born. Everything above this horizon line is what we can see. Everything below it, of course, is on the other side of the earth. So when this person was born, the sun was high up in the sky. If the person was born at sunrise, the sun would be right here on what's called the ascendant. If the person was born at sunset, the sun would be over here. If the person is born at noon or midday, the sun is high up in the sky. If the person is born at night, the sun is down here at the nadir, or the bottom of the chart. The houses, this is where we have our life experiences. And if you go with the handout that we had in class, that's what will be most useful as we go through this this slideshow. But the houses are the where our life experiences play out. This is a really valuable perspective of how astrology kind of lays out. Astrology is from our perspective. So in this particular diagram, here we are sitting on Earth. And as we look from Earth, we look across the solar system, we look into the heavens, and for example, the planet Saturn, we can see the planet Saturn. And we can see that in this particular diagram, the planet Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius. That's how we read it, Saturn in Aquarius. Just as we would look in this direction, we see that Jupiter is in Leo. So the astrology chart is basically a snapshot of where the planets are at the time we were born from our location. When we talk about the planets, we're just going to walk through these. We know that the sun is the giver of life, the conscious mind, our creativity, our will to live, our life force, and our identity. The planets in the solar system reflect their presence and action in the solar system, correlating to the presence and action in astrology in the definition of how we define what the planets are. So for example, the sun, we are the solar system. The sun represents our identity, our creativity. So the sun in astrology represents the same, our sense of self, our identity, and our creativity. And that's true for all of the planets. The sun represents those values that best represent our evolutionary journey. So, for example, a Pisces has certain values, and those values really clarify what our journey will be. True for all of the signs when the sun is in different signs. We went over this in class, just the higher road, lower road, sunny day, cloudy day of some of the signs when the sun is in these signs, and we're going to go into that just a little bit more in a second. You can refer to this handout if you'd like from the class. And again, we walk through these. But let's start with Aries. Aries, the sun in Aries is the development of courage. That's the higher road. The lower road is fear and anger. It's fun that the planets of Mars, which has a corollary to Aries, are these two small planets that represent fear and terror. Isn't that great? In mythology. Taurus, we had talked about, represents the calm simplicity on the higher road and stubborn and materialism on the lower road. Gemini, the highest attribute of Gemini, the solar expression of Gemini would be curiosity. And the lower road, or the cloudy day of the Gemini, represents mind games, distractions, narcissism, I know everything, put a period at the end of that sentence, as opposed to being open and curious and wanting to learn. Cancer is the archetype of the mother, so it represents nurturance. The Cancer, as we know, also has the archetype of the crab. And the crab, of course, being very sensitive, needs to have a shell. And if we take that too far, then what happens is that Cancer archetype begins to hide from life because it's just too rough out there in the real world. And all of these higher road, lower road, sunny day, cloudy day, they're all part of the expression of the solar energy. Of course, we always want to lean towards the more sunny day and the higher road. The Leo is really about the creativity and self-expression, to seek respect and not attention. It's the archetype of the performer. It's the archetype of the entertainer. It's the archetype of the king or the queen. And the lower road of the Leo archetype is just that overwhelming, compulsive need for attention that is the lower ego self. For Leos, it's really critical to have a healthy ego. It's great. It's great to be recognized, and it's great to be respected. The Virgo, we had talked about the archetype of the Virgo is of service and of developing a craft. We mentioned Mother Teresa as that a symbol of that archetype, taking what reality presents, understanding what perfection can be, and developing a craft or a service in order to move reality towards that perfection. On the other side of that, we look at reality and we just become critical. We don't really put into action any type of motion or service. We just complain about everything instead of doing something or creating some kind of action. The Libra is all about balance, love, diplomacy. John Lennon was a Libra. And, imagine all the people living life in peace. But sometimes peace comes with a pretty high price. And if we pay too high a price of it, we don't develop a strong sense of self. This, of course, is a picture of Chamberlain appeasing the Germans prior to World War II and giving up most of Europe. And of course, that didn't turn out too well in the long run. The Scorpio, we had talked about Scorpio being one of the more intense signs. It's intense. One of the reasons it's intense is because Scorpio archetype is to tell the truth. The Scorpio archetype is to live deeply and to live passionately. And in order to do that, you have to live in truth. Of course, the lower road of Scorpio is just drama, psychodrama, and manipulation, and trying to get your way in ways that are not powerful but are more devious. Sagittarius, faith is really the key word for the Sagittarian archetype. Faith that there are places in our life that we can expand into, faith in the benefit of life, and faith in all things grand and beneficial. Of course, the lower road of Sagittarius is getting stuck in self-righteousness and dogma, like this is how it is. This is how things should be, which is constraining. Capricorn, really the key words are integrity and self-discipline. Our famous, the most famous archetype of Capricorn would, of course, be Martin Luther King Jr., who was a Capricorn. The time is always right to do what is right. It's really important for the Capricorn archetype to walk their talk, and he demonstrated that. The lower road of the Capricorn is control and trying to create success at any cost, and we can certainly see where that can happen. Aquarius is all about creating individuation and freedom, is to divest thyself of false wrappings and be your own true, authentic, unique self, is part of the Aquarian quest and journey. What happens, though, if we become individualized, we sometimes feel alienated. We sometimes get rejected because we're different, and we can fall into feeling separated or alienated or misunderstood. So the goal is to individuate, not separate. That would be the highest role of the Aquarian archetype. And Pisces is into the mystical experience, the dissolving of consciousness into greater consciousness. The higher road would be to do that spiritually. The lower road would be to obliterate your sense of self and dissolve yourself into something else, which can happen quite commonly in this world. Let's just quickly go on to the idea that if we take care of our sun, if we're a Capricorn and we live in integrity, we get to feel content. If we're a Pisces and we follow the spiritual path, there's a sense of contentment. This is true for all of the signs. If our manifestation of our sun is through the sign of Libra, if we create balance and harmony, we're going to feel content. So that's how it begins to work. The moon. We talked about the moon. It's impossible not to feel something, even from this picture, when you look at the moon. So obviously the moon represents our sense of feelings, our emotional, sensitive, intuitive aspect of who we are, that part of our psyche we're developing, the emotional aspects of our life, the feminine qualities. It's our development. The moon represents the development of our ability to feel. And how is that done? Depending on what sign the moon is in. That's how we do it. If the moon is in Leo, one of the ways we develop our sense to feel is through the creative aspects. It's our ability to respond emotionally. The moon represents that, and the moon also represents that really deep inner place that we get to know what needs to be healed and regenerated. So the moon is the what? All the planets are what? So it tells us what needs to be healed. If we want to know how it needs to be healed, we look at the sign. If we want to know where we need that healing, we look at the house. So this is how the language begins to unfold. And if we take care of the moon, if we nourish the moon, we get to be happy. And that's a beautiful thing. So if we have a moon, let's say we have a moon in Cancer. A moon in Cancer is nurturing. A moon in Cancer is sensitive and understanding the needs of others. If we follow into that, our emotional life becomes rich, and we find happiness through that. We're going to talk about the planets. We talked about Mercury, of course, the closest to the sun. If the sun is our sense of self and ego, then Mercury, the first planet out, becomes everything has to pass Mercury before it goes out into the universe. And so it becomes that place where we begin to look at how we transmit the ideas. Of course, in mythology, Mercury is a messenger of the gods. That's what we were just talking about. And Mercury orbits the sun at every 88 days, so it's pretty quick. So Mercury orbits the sun just like the mind orbits our ego. And Mercury is all about perception. How do we perceive information? How do we transmit information? So, we can look at this. We can see a rabbit or we can see a duck. And it's really the key thing that is stimulated in the Mercury archetype is curiosity. Again, staying open to ideas. Venus, the most beautiful light in the sky, represents our ability to develop and to be in relationship. It represents our needs, and it represents what we find attractive. Of course, Venus is the planet most similar to Earth, so it represents our relationship to be something compatible and familiar. Venus is harmony, balance, beauty, peace. It's represented by the mythological god Venus, of course, love, beauty, peace, and our ability to try to find equilibrium in this world. Mars is the development of will and courage. Mars, of course, is a mythological god of war. Where are we willing to take a stand? In a sense, where are we willing to go to battle? So Mars represents that aspect of our psyche. Our evolutionary goal is, can we stand up for ourselves? How that is done is through the sign. And where that is done is in the house. And so we'll talk about this more as we develop our course through astrology. Mars is passion, life force, sexual energy, has masculine qualities to it, but masculine is not the same as males. It's that masculine energy carries these qualities of it. The next planet we look at is Jupiter, the largest of all the planets, represents the great benefit, good fortune, our innate sense of self, and our evolutionary goal is to say yes to the opportunities and to have the faith of humanity and beyond humanity, of something greater. Jupiter is where things come easy. It's an aspect of our psyche of where things tend to come easy. And again, depending upon house placement or sign, that's where and how it unfolds. Jupiter in Aquarius, how is to become your individual self. That is a natural aspect of where you are. It's a beneficial thing to where you are. Let's say it's in the fourth house, the house of home or family. So to be individualistic in your own clan, your family, your home is a very expansive, beneficial thing. So that's how we begin to put the language together. Jupiter's evolutionary question is, don't underestimate this ability to expand and to be big. The biggest human temptation in life is to settle for too little. Jupiter asks us, where have we underestimated ourselves? And where have we settled for too little? Again, sign and house will unfold that for us. Saturn is the last planet we saw before the advent of the telescope. It represented boundaries and limitations. It represents the sense that things take time, the development of time, and the evolutionary task that Saturn has presented to us is how to become great. This Jesse Owens quote is great. We all have dreams, but in order to make the dreams come into reality, it takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort. So how do we become great? Through discipline, dedication, and commitment. And that takes time. What territory is the universe asking us to become great? Look at where Saturn is in your chart. Is it in the first house? Is it in the 10th house of career? Let's say it's in the 10th house. To become great, part of the evolutionary test to become great will have to do with careers and your sense of self in the public domain. Saturn is doing the right thing even when you don't feel like doing the right thing. That's the hard work and the discipline that is required. Saturn really wants us to become great, and in part of that evolutionary task, sometimes we have to in a sense give up something that is limiting us. As we pointed out in class, Saturn wants us to mature and to grow up, and in part of that we often have to leave behind a person, a place, a thing, or perhaps an idea. And we've all had experiences in life where we've had to give something up. It was perhaps very painful, and we didn't even want to do it. Maybe it was just an idea about who we were, or a place that we lived and we really liked. But the universe pretty much sends us through these trials and tribulations. But on the other side of it, we say, wow, I would never have become who I am today if I didn't have that experience. Uranus represents that part of our internal circuitry that wants to be free, that wants to be individualistic, that wants to be unique. Uranus was a planet, of course, that was discovered with the advent of telescopes. And again, it just shattered all the way that things were and how we looked at things. It's a planet that doesn't make sense. It's a planet that breaks the rules. And that's what allows us to be free, is to break the rules and the constraints that society and we put upon ourselves. Uranus is the willingness to break the rules, to be socially unacceptable. Where do we stand out? And again, to individuate, but not separate. The highest road is to individuate to our evolutionary path. Neptune, this is familiar, it has a harmonic with Pisces. It's the call to dissolve the ego. And again, spiritually, we can begin to dissolve the ego. And of course, we can dissolve the ego through addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever. Neptune is really the sound of consciousness. It's the Om of the universe. It's that vibration, that higher sense of calling in the spiritual path. So Neptune in our chart tells us how our spiritual path unfolds, but through the sign, and in what house. So for example, if you have Neptune in the 6th house, the 6th house is the house of service. So part of the spiritual path with Neptune in the 6th house would be one of service. See how that begins to play out? Pluto, the final planet that we know of, really represents the ability to transform ourselves. It has a lot to do with the power, how powerful we are, and it has a lot to do with the wealth that we can kind of mine in ourselves to bring forth into the world, and the power and the resources that we need in order to go through transformation. Mythology, Pluto is the god of the underworld, and just by further information, Jupiter rules the sky and Neptune rules the sea, Pluto rules the underworld. So as we begin to mix in mythology as this goes. So the underworld in mythology represents where things go to die in order to be reborn. That's how that begins to work. Pluto is associated with renewal and rebirth, endings and new beginnings. So that's a pretty quick walkthrough of some of the things we went over in class. I hope it jogs your memory of the things we had talked about. Of course, you can always reach out to me at 2stevestraw@gmail.com if you have any other questions or want to know some more about astrology. or check the website, drstivestroud.com. This is part one of another short video that I'll be sending you. The other one mostly just focuses on the houses. All right, thanks. I hope that was helpful.